The text from Trisha lit up my phone screen like a bomb waiting to explode. Edith, he's bringing her to Marco's party. I'm so sorry. My hands trembled as I set down my morning coffee, spilling a few drops onto the journal where I'd been writing about happier times. Times when Randolph and I were still a family, when our son Marco's birthday parties were occasions for joy rather than battlegrounds. I'm Edith, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a perfect life. Now I'm a single mom trying to co-parent with a man who threw away 15 years of marriage for someone who could have been my younger sister. You can't be serious. I texted back to Trisha. My former sister-in-law had become an unlikely ally in this mess. Dead serious. Grace is furious too, but you know how she is. She'll never say anything to him. Of course not. Grace, my ex-mother-in-law, would rather blame me for her precious son's wandering eye than admit he was capable of such betrayal. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Griffin. Just heard the news. Want me to accidentally spill red wine on her? Despite everything, I laughed. Thanks, but I have a better idea. Oh God, what are you planning? Griffin's response was immediate. I glanced at the manila envelope on my desk, filled with screenshots, hotel receipts, and credit card statements. Evidence I'd been gathering since I first discovered Randolph's affair with Amber, his young marketing consultant. Nothing they don't deserve, I typed back. The sound of small feet padding down the hallway made me quickly tuck the envelope into my desk drawer. Marco appeared in the doorway, still in his dinosaur pajamas, his dark curls a mess. Mom, is Dad still coming to my party tomorrow? My heart clenched. Of course, sweetie. He wouldn't miss it. And is it okay if I show him my new science project? The one about volcanoes? I forced a smile. Absolutely. He'll love it. Marco beamed and ran off to get ready for school while I fought back tears. This party was supposed to be about him, about celebrating my little boy turning 8. Instead, Randolph was turning it into another opportunity to parade around his new relationship, as if our family's destruction was something to celebrate. My phone rang. It was Aubrey, my brother. Hey sis, you holding up okay? Did Trisha tell you? Yeah. Want me to punch him? Because I will absolutely punch him. I smiled, grateful for my brother's protective instincts. No punching at an 8-year-old's birthday party. Fine, he sighed dramatically. But seriously, Ed, you don't have to go through with this. We can have a separate party for Marco, just family and your friends. No, I said firmly. I'm not letting them push me out of my own son's celebration. Besides, I paused, considering whether to share my plans. Besides what? Aubrey's voice was suspicious. Nothing. Just be there tomorrow, okay? And bring your camera. Edith. Trust me, I said, then ended the call before he could protest further. I pulled out the envelope again, spreading its contents across my desk. Texts between Randolph and Amber dating back to when we were still married. Restaurant receipts from business dinners that were actually dates. Hotel bookings under his company account. My hands stopped shaking as I began sorting the documents, making copies and sliding them into smaller envelopes. Each one labeled with the name of a party guest who needed to know the truth. A text from Randolph interrupted my work. Marco wants the chocolate cake from Miller's Bakery. Don't forget. The audacity of this man, acting like everything was normal, like he hadn't destroyed our family, like bringing his affair partner to our son's party was perfectly acceptable. I typed back, already ordered it. And Randolph? I hope you and Amber enjoy the party. 3 dots appeared as he typed, disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, don't make a scene, Edith. This is about Marco. You're right, I replied. It is about Marco, and teaching him about consequences. I turned off my phone before he could respond and looked at the stack of envelopes on my desk. Tomorrow, Randolph would learn that karma doesn't just come around. Sometimes it shows up at a birthday party with documentary evidence and a guest list full of witnesses. I heard Marco singing to himself as he got ready for school, his innocent voice a reminder of everything at stake. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about standing up for myself, for my son, for every woman who's ever been told to leave quietly and accept disrespect with dignity. Tomorrow, I would be anything but quiet. The community center buzzed with activity as I carried in the last of the decorations. Marco had chosen a dinosaur theme, and inflatable T-Rexes bobbed gently in the air conditioning. Need help with that? Griffin appeared beside me, taking some streamers from my arms. Thanks. Have they arrived yet? No, but Grace is here. She's already rearranging the gift table. Perfect. Right on cue, my former mother-in-law's voice cut through the chatter. Edith, dear, these decorations are a bit excessive, don't you think? I turned to face her, plastering on my sweetest smile. Marco picked them out himself, Grace. You know how much he loves dinosaurs. Randolph would have chosen something more sophisticated. She sniffed. Well, Randolph isn't the one who spent 3 hours putting this together, is he? Before Grace could respond, the door opened and there they were. Randolph walked in with Amber on his arm, her red dress entirely too formal for a child's birthday party. My stomach lurched as I watched them make their entrance like they were attending a movie premiere rather than an 8-year-old celebration. Mom! Marco ran past them straight to me, wrapping his arms around my waist. This is amazing! Look at all the dinosaurs. I hugged him tight, noticing how Randolph's face tightened at our son's obvious preference for greeting me first. Happy birthday, buddy, Randolph called out, holding up an elaborately wrapped gift. Come see what we got you. Marco bounced over to his father, and I watched as Amber placed her hand on my son's shoulder with familiar ease. My blood boiled, but I kept my expression neutral. Quite a show they're putting on, Trisha whispered, appearing beside me. Did you bring the... I patted my purse. All ready, just waiting for the right moment. I overheard Randolph earlier, she continued. He told Amber not to worry about the ex-wife making a scene. Said you'd probably leave early like you always do. My fingers curled into fists. Did he now? Edith! Amber's voice rang out as she approached, all fake warmth and practiced sympathy. I hope it's okay that I came. Randolph said it would be fine. Of course it's fine, I replied, matching her tone. I'm sure you and Randolph have discussed what's best for my son at length. She missed the sarcasm completely. Oh, we have. Randy's been teaching me all about parenting. It's so important to present a united front. Behind her, I saw Griffin mime gagging. Speaking of united fronts, I said, those are lovely earrings. Sapphires, right? Amber touched them, beaming. Yes, Randy gave them to me last month for our anniversary. Anniversary? I raised an eyebrow. How interesting, considering we were still married last month. Her smile faltered as she realized her mistake. I mean, that is... Mom. Marco's voice saved her from further embarrassment. Can we do cake soon? In a little bit, sweetie. Why don't you show your friends the volcano project you made? As Marco led a group of excited kids to his science display, Randolph approached me. Can we talk? I followed him to a quiet corner, aware of the eyes watching us. Look, he said, lowering his voice. I know this is awkward, but we need to be adults about this. Amber is part of my life now, which means she'll be part of Marco's life too. Part of his life? I laughed softly. Like you were part of his life when you missed his science fair to take her to the Cayman Islands? His face reddened. That was a business trip. Really? Because I have the hotel receipts that say otherwise. Are you threatening me? Not at all. I'm just making conversation about your business practices. The party continued around us as we stood there, locked in our quiet battle. Across the room, Amber was showing off her new bracelet to some of the mothers, who were politely pretending to be impressed. Don't do anything stupid, Edith, Randolph warned. You'll only embarrass yourself. I smiled, thinking of the envelopes in my purse. You know what's funny, Randolph? You always did underestimate me. Remember when you said I'd never finish my degree? Or when you told everyone I was too emotional to handle the family finances? He shifted uncomfortably. That's ancient history. No, I said, watching as Trisha began discreetly distributing the first round of envelopes to selected guests. That's just the prologue. The real story is about to begin. I walked away, leaving him staring after me with growing unease. The cake would be served in 30 minutes, and by then, everyone would know exactly what kind of man Randolph really was. Behind me, I heard him mutter, "She's just bitter. She'll probably slink away like always." I smiled. "Not this time, Randolph. Not this time." Grace cornered me by the refreshment table as I was refilling the punch bowl. "I hope you're pleased with yourself," she hissed, her perfectly manicured nails clicking against her glass, "making everyone uncomfortable with your presence." My presence? I carefully set down the punch bowl. At my son's birthday party? Which I planned and paid for? You know what I mean. A divorced woman should show more dignity. In your day, women were expected to smile while their husbands paraded around with their mistresses. I kept my voice low, aware of the children nearby. Don't be crude, Edith. Randolph simply upgraded to someone more suitable. The word upgraded hit me like a slap. I thought about all the times Grace had criticized my clothes, my career choices, my parenting. Each comment designed to chip away at my confidence. "Mom." Marco's voice cut through the tension. "Grandma, come see what Dad and Amber got me." We followed him to the gift table where he proudly held up a gleaming tablet. Amber stood nearby, practically glowing with self-satisfaction. "We thought it was time Marco had something more grown up," she announced. "Randy and I picked it out together." "How thoughtful," I said, watching Marco's face light up. "Though we did agree no electronics until he's 10, Randolph appeared behind Amber, wrapping an arm around her waist. "Times change, Edith. You can't keep him bubble-wrapped forever." "No, but I can respect the boundaries we set as parents." I turned to Marco. "Honey, why don't you open some of your other presents?" "But Dad said I could play with it now." "After the party," I said firmly. "Remember what we discussed about being present with our guests?" Marco nodded reluctantly, and I caught Randolph's scowl. "Good. Let him remember who actually parents our child day to day." Across the room, I noticed Trisha talking quietly with several guests. One woman covered her mouth in shock, while another shot daggers at Randolph with her eyes. The envelopes were doing their work. "Edith." Aubrey appeared at my elbow, camera in hand. "Mind if I get some photos of the birthday boy?" "Of course." "Marco, want to show Uncle Aubrey your volcano project?" As Marco led Aubrey away, I overheard Amber talking to one of the mothers. "And then Randy surprised me with this gorgeous necklace. He said it reminded him of our first weekend together in Miami." I checked the date engraved on the necklace's clasp from across the room, 2 months before our separation. Another piece of evidence already documented in those envelopes. "Quite the show you're putting on," Griffin whispered as he passed by with more ice. "The natives are getting restless." He was right. The atmosphere had shifted. Guests were clustering in small groups, whispering and casting furtive glances at Randolph and Amber. Grace was working overtime, flitting between groups like a desperate butterfly, trying to maintain control of the narrative. "Edith?" A quiet voice behind me made me turn. It was Sarah, one of the school moms I'd always considered more Randolph's friend than mine. She held one of the envelopes in trembling hands. Is this all true?" "Every word," I replied. "Check the dates on the receipts." "But he told everyone that I had emotional problems? That I was unstable?" I smiled sadly. Easier to believe that than accept he was cheating with someone barely older than his intern, right? Sarah's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry. We all just assumed—" "It's okay." I touched her arm gently. "That's exactly what he wanted everyone to think." A commotion near the gift table drew our attention. Amber was showing off yet another piece of jewelry, a distinctive sapphire ring I recognized from the hotel security footage included in the envelopes. "I can't believe he gave her your grandmother's ring," Trisha murmured, joining us. "The one he claimed was lost." "Neither could his insurance company," I replied. "They were very interested in those photos." The party continued its slow simmer toward chaos. More guests were receiving envelopes, more whispers were circulating, and Randolph's confident smile was beginning to crack around the edges. He kept checking his phone, probably wondering why he was getting strange looks from his colleagues and friends. Marco remained blissfully absorbed in his party games, surrounded by his friends and their dinosaur-themed excitement. That's all that mattered, keeping him happy and protected while the adult world imploded around him. "Almost time for cake," Grace announced loudly, trying to restore normalcy. Perfect timing. Because once we sang happy birthday and cut that cake, there wouldn't be anything normal about this party ever again. "Everything's ready," Aubrey whispered, sliding next to me as I arranged the candles on Marco's dinosaur-themed cake. "You sure about this?" "Watch this," I murmured, straightening up. "Hey, Amber, would you help me with something?" Amber practically bounced over, eager to play the role of helpful stepmom. "Of course. Could you grab that box of party favors, the one behind the punch bowl?" As she moved away, I nodded to Trisha, who smoothly intercepted several guests heading toward the refreshment table. Right on cue, Griffin emerged from the hallway, phone in hand. "Hey, Randy," he called out. "Remember that golf trip last March? Found some great photos." Randolph's head snapped up, color draining from his face. March wasn't a golf trip. It was his first weekend with Amber at the beachfront hotel. The hotel where he'd used our joint credit card. "Not now, Griffin," Randolph said sharply. "But look at this view." Griffin held up his phone, showing the exact hotel where the affair began. "Beautiful place, right, Amber?" Amber, returning with the box, froze mid-step. "Oh, that's where—" "Where what?" Grace interrupted, suddenly alert. "Nothing," Randolph cut in. "Just a business conference." "Must have been some conference," said Sarah loudly. "Considering the room service bills?" The tension in the room thickened. More guests were receiving envelopes now, passed discreetly from hand to hand like contraband. I watched Randolph's eyes dart around the room, finally noticing the shifting dynamics. "Edith," he growled, stalking toward me. "What are you doing?" "Me? I'm hosting our son's birthday party. Speaking of which, Marco, honey, ready for cake?" Marco's excited "yes" drew everyone's attention to the cake table. I began lighting candles, aware of Randolph seething beside me. "Whatever you're planning," he hissed under his breath. "Stop it now." "Or what?" I whispered back. "You'll tell everyone I'm crazy? Unstable?" "Oh wait, you already did that." "Mom," Marco called out. "Can Dad help light the candles too?" "Of course, sweetie." I handed Randolph a lighter with a sweet smile. Family tradition, right? As we worked together lighting candles, I could feel him growing more agitated, especially when one of his golf buddies approached with an envelope in hand, shaking his head in disgust. "Quite a paper trail you left, buddy," the friend muttered before walking away. Amber appeared at Randolph's side, clutching her phone. "Randy, why am I getting weird texts about Miami?" "Not now," he snapped. "But your secretary just messaged me about some hotel receipts." "I said not now." His voice carried across the room, making several children jump. Marco looked up, startled by his father's tone. "Everything's fine," I said smoothly. "Let's sing happy birthday." As everyone gathered around, I noticed Grace cornering Trisha by the gift table. "What's in those envelopes?" she demanded. "The truth," Trisha replied, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Maybe you should ask your son about his business expenses." The singing began, slightly off-key and tension-filled. Marco beamed, oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around him. Randolph stood rigidly on one side of the cake, Amber hovering uncertainly behind him. "Make a wish, sweetheart," I encouraged as the song ended. Marco took a deep breath and blew out his candles. Everyone clapped, but the sound was hollow, distracted. People were opening envelopes, checking phones, whispering in corners. "Who wants cake?" I asked brightly. "Actually," Randolph announced, "Amber and I should go." "Go?" Marco's face fell. "But Dad, you haven't seen my volcano experiment yet." "Daddy has some work things to handle," Amber said quickly. "But we'll—" "Work things?" Sarah interrupted. Like those expense reports everyone's talking about? The room grew quiet. Randolph grabbed Amber's arm. We're leaving, now. But the presents, Amber protested. Leave them. As they hurried toward the door, I caught Aubrey's eye. He nodded, understanding my signal. The next phase was about to begin. Marco, I said gently, why don't you show everyone your volcano while I cut the cake? As the children gathered around Marco's science project, the adults remained frozen in a tableau of unfolding scandal. Grace stood near the gift table, frantically texting. Trisha was distributing the final round of envelopes. And through the window, I could see Randolph and Amber arguing in the parking lot. Quite a party, Griffin said, joining me at the cake table. Oh, I replied, picking up the cake knife with steady hands. It's about to get even better. The real show was just minutes away, and this time, everyone would witness exactly what happens when karma comes served with a side of birthday cake. The parking lot argument didn't last long. Randolph stormed back inside, face flushed with Amber trailing behind him. Their dramatic return coincided perfectly with Marco's volcano demonstration. And when you mix the baking soda with vinegar, Marco explained to his captivated audience, the volcano erupted right as Randolph reached the gift table, red foam spilling over just like his barely contained rage. The children cheered while the adults continued their tense whispered conversations. What exactly are you accusing me of? Randolph demanded, waving an envelope at me. I'm not accusing you of anything, I replied calmly, continuing to cut cake slices. Those documents speak for themselves. Mom, Marco called out. Did you see? It worked just like we practiced. It was perfect, honey. Who wants cake? As kids rushed forward for dessert, Sarah approached Amber, who was fidgeting with her sapphire necklace. So, Miami in March? Wasn't that when Randolph was supposedly at a medical conference? Amber's eyes widened. He said he was separated. Really? Another mom joined in. Because I distinctly remember him bringing Edith to the school fundraiser that month. The whispers grew louder. More people were pulling out their phones, comparing dates and photos. Grace tried desperately to maintain control. This is ridiculous, she announced. Whatever Edith has told you. Actually, Trisha interrupted. I provided most of the documentation. Bank statements don't lie, Mother. Grace's face went pale. You helped her? Your own brother? I helped the truth, Trisha replied. Someone had to. Randolph grabbed my arm as I passed with cake plates. You've made your point. Now stop this. Let go of me, I said quietly. Or what? He sneered. Or I'll show everyone the video. He released me instantly. What video? The security footage from the Miami hotel. You really should have used cash instead of the company card. His face went from red to white. You're bluffing. Check your email. I smiled sweetly. I sent a preview to the board of directors 10 minutes ago. As if on cue, his phone started buzzing. Multiple notifications lit up the screen. You had no right, he began. I had every right. I cut him off. Just like I had the right to know my husband was cheating on me with an intern while I was caring for his sick mother. Grace's sharp intake of breath drew attention. That's what those hospital visits were about? When you said you were working late? Mom, I can explain. Save it, Grace snapped. I spent 6 weeks in that hospital, and your wife, your ex-wife, was there every day while you were... She couldn't finish the sentence. For the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy for my former mother-in-law. Meanwhile, Amber was scrolling through her phone, her face crumpling. These dates? The gifts? Randy, you told me you were divorced already. Amber, baby, let me explain. Don't baby me. These credit card statements show you bought this necklace the same day you took your wife to her birthday dinner. The room had gone silent except for the happy chatter of children enjoying their cake. Marco's voice carried clearly. Uncle Griffin, can you help me show everyone my new science books? Sure thing, buddy, Griffin replied, smoothly directing the kids' attention away from the adult drama. Randolph's phone kept buzzing. His face grew increasingly panicked as he read the messages. The board wants an emergency meeting, he muttered. How did you get these records? You'd be amazed what people will share when they learn they've been deceived, I said. Your secretary was particularly helpful after finding out about her canceled pension. You had no right to contact my employees. Your former employees, I corrected. The ones you fired to cover your tracks. Amber was backing away now, tears streaming down her face. I can't be here. This isn't what I... She turned and fled, leaving her designer purse behind. Randolph moved to follow her, but stopped when his mother stepped in his path. Don't you dare leave this party, Grace said, her voice trembling. Your son deserves better than that. Speaking of Marco, I added, he's about to open presents. Coming, Randolph? Or are you running away from that responsibility too? He stood there, trapped between his angry mother, his departing girlfriend, and a room full of people who now knew exactly what kind of man he was. Time for presents, Marco called out excitedly. I walked away from Randolph, head held high, knowing I'd already given my son the best gift possible. The truth about his father, wrapped in justice and served with perfect timing. Behind me, I heard Grace say quietly to her son, We need to talk about what happens next. Indeed we did. And for once, I wasn't the one who needed to worry about the consequences. I think we need to address the elephant in the room, Sarah announced, standing up as Marco finished opening his last present. The children were happily playing with their party favors in the corner, supervised by Griffin and Aubrey. This isn't the time, Randolph warned, but the floodgates had opened. No, I think it's exactly the time, said Tom, one of the other dads. We've all seen the evidence. You used company funds to finance your affair while telling everyone your wife was unstable? You don't understand, Randolph started. We understand perfectly. Another parent cut in. You gaslighted your wife, manipulated your friends, and defrauded your company. Randolph's phone buzzed again. His face went ashen as he read the message. They've suspended my credentials. I can't access the hospital system. The board works quickly when fraud is involved, I said quietly, especially when patient funds are misappropriated. Patient funds? Grace's voice cracked. What patient funds? The charitable foundation, Tricia explained. The one for children's cancer treatment? Check page 3 of your envelope, Mother. Grace's hands shook as she pulled out the documents. These transactions, these are from the foundation's emergency fund. Which explains why 3 families couldn't get their treatment coverage approved last quarter, Sarah added. While someone was spending their money on luxury hotels, the room erupted in angry voices. Parents who had donated to the foundation, colleagues who had vouched for Randolph's character, friends who had taken his side in the divorce, all of them confronting the truth at once. I can explain everything, Randolph insisted, but his voice was drowned out by the chorus of accusations. You told me Edith was lying about the missing college fund. Those were my patients you denied treatment to. We defended you. Marco's voice cut through the chaos. Dad, why is everyone mad at you? The room fell silent. Randolph stood there, facing his son, mouth opening and closing without sound. Your dad made some mistakes, I said gently, moving to Marco's side. Adult mistakes that he needs to fix. Is that why Amber left crying? Yes, buddy. Randolph finally spoke, his voice hoarse. That's part of it. Did you do something bad? Before Randolph could answer, his phone rang. The caller ID displayed board chairman. I have to take this, he mumbled, heading for the door. Running away again? Grace called after him. Like you ran away when I needed you in the hospital? He paused, hand on the door handle. Mother, please. Don't mother me, she snapped. I read the bank statements. While Edith was driving me to chemotherapy, you were charging champagne at beach resorts. I think, Tricia interjected, it's time we discuss the legal implications. Legal? Randolph spun around. You wouldn't dare. The district attorney's office is very interested in financial fraud cases, I said calmly. especially ones involving medical charities. The color drained from his face. You contacted the DA? No, said Tom, stepping forward. I did. As a board member, it's my legal obligation to report fraud. Randolph's phone kept ringing, the chairman waiting on one end, his future crumbling on the other. Mom? Marco tugged at my sleeve. Can we have more cake? Of course, sweetheart. I smiled at my son, then looked directly at Randolph. Why don't you get some too, before your father has to leave? Leave? Marco's face fell. But we haven't done the treasure hunt yet. I'm sorry, buddy, Randolph said, finally answering his phone. I have to... Hello? Yes, sir? I understand. No, sir. Yes, I'll come in right away. He ended the call, looking defeated. The board wants to see me immediately, and they're bringing their lawyers. Good, Grace said firmly. It's about time you faced consequences for your actions. As Randolph headed for the door, Marco ran after him. Dad, wait! You forgot your piece of cake. My heart broke watching my son hold out a paper plate, still trying to share his special day with the father who had betrayed us all. Randolph took the plate with trembling hands. Thank you, Marco. I'm sorry. For what? Marco asked innocently. But Randolph just shook his head and walked out, leaving his son standing there with questions no 8-year-old should have to ask. I moved to comfort Marco, but Trisha beat me to it. Hey, buddy, she said brightly. Want to show me that awesome volcano again? As Marco led his aunt away, Grace approached me slowly. Edith, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I owe you an apology. No, I replied, watching my son's resilient smile. You owe him one. We all do. But right now, let's just let him have his party. The room slowly returned to birthday celebrations, but something fundamental had shifted. Truth had finally won out, and none of us would ever be the same. I think it's time, Griffin whispered, nodding toward the group of parents still huddled in discussion. The children were occupied with a dinosaur-themed scavenger hunt, giving us the perfect opportunity. I cleared my throat. Everyone? I have something I'd like to say. The room quieted as I moved to the center. Grace sat heavily in a nearby chair, still clutching the damning documents. Trisha stood supportively at my side. First, I want to thank you all for coming to Marco's party, I began. But I also need to thank you for something else. For being witnesses to the truth. Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. We should be apologizing to you, Edith. We believed his lies. That's what manipulators do, I said. They make you question reality. They turn friends against each other. They make you doubt yourself until you're nothing but a shell of who you used to be. Grace's shoulders shook with silent sobs. But that's not why I'm speaking now, I continued. I'm here to tell you what happens next. Tom stepped forward. The board will press charges. That's non-negotiable. I understand. I nodded. But there's more. That foundation money? It's going back to the families who needed it. Every penny. How? Someone asked. Because I've spent the last 6 months documenting everything. Working with the hospital's compliance office, tracking every transaction. And tomorrow morning, my lawyer will file a civil suit to recover those funds. Gasps filled the room. Trisha squeezed my hand. But that's not all, I continued. I'm also announcing the creation of a new foundation, one that will help families affected by medical fraud and domestic abuse. With what money? Grace asked quietly. With the settlement money from the divorce that Randolph doesn't know about yet? I smiled. He was so busy hiding his affair that he never noticed me gathering evidence of his offshore accounts. More gasps. Tom let out a low whistle. You see, while Randolph was flying Amber to Miami, I was flying to the Cayman Islands, meeting with bank officials, following the money trail. And tomorrow, that trail leads straight to the district attorney's office. Mom, Marco's voice rang out. We found all the dinosaur eggs. That's wonderful, sweetie. Everyone, help yourself to more cake while the kids open their prize bags. As the children crowded around the prize table, Grace approached me slowly. You knew, she said. You knew about everything, and still you drove me to every chemo appointment. Of course I did. You're Marco's grandmother. But I was horrible to you. All those years I defended him, blamed you. You were manipulated too, Grace. We all were. Suddenly, the door burst open. Amber stood there, mascara streaked down her face. Is it true? She demanded. About the Cancer Foundation? I nodded. He told me that money was from his investments. He said... She choked back a sob. He said he was building a future for us. He built it on lies, Trisha said gently, just like everything else. Amber's legs gave out, and Sarah rushed to help her to a chair. I didn't know, she whispered. About any of it. The marriage, the money. He said you were separated, that you were unstable. That's what he wanted you to believe, I said. Just like he wanted me to believe I was crazy for suspecting him. The ring. Amber pulled off the sapphire ring with trembling fingers. He said it was his grandmother's. It was, Grace said sharply. And before that, it was my mother's. A family heirloom he apparently thought nothing of giving to his mistress. Amber placed the ring on the table like it burned her. I'm so sorry, she whispered. To all of you. Mom, Marco called again. Can we show everyone our surprise dance now? I smiled at my son's perfect timing. Absolutely. Everyone, Marco and I have been practicing something special. As Marco and I took our places for our choreographed dinosaur dance, I saw Amber slip quietly out the door. Grace picked up the discarded ring, turning it over in her hands before walking over to me. This belongs to you, she said, pressing it into my palm. You're more family than he ever deserved. The music started, and Marco began his enthusiastic T-Rex movements. Looking around the room at these people, friends who now knew the truth, family who had chosen sides based on love rather than blood, I felt stronger than ever. Ready for the big finish? Marco asked, beaming. Ready, I replied, watching as Trisha hit record on her phone. This moment, this truth, this victory, it would all be preserved forever. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing lies. Sometimes it's showing the world who you really are and dancing like nobody's watching, even when everyone is. The morning sun streamed through my kitchen window as I sipped my coffee, scrolling through the local news on my tablet. The headline made me pause. Local doctor pleads guilty in charity fraud case. My phone buzzed with a text from Trisha. Have you seen it? Before I could reply, Marco bounded into the kitchen, already dressed for school. Mom, can we watch the dinosaur dance video again? After breakfast, sweetie. I set down my phone as Grace walked in through the back door, carrying a basket of fresh muffins. I thought we could all use some comfort food today, she said, setting them on the counter. She'd been staying with us since the investigation began, slowly rebuilding our relationship while her son's world crumbled. Did you see the news? I asked her. She nodded grimly. The board called. They're announcing the new foundation leadership this afternoon. Mom, Marco interrupted. Grandma, watch this. He launched into his T-Rex walk, making us both laugh. The doorbell rang. Griffin and Sarah stood on the porch, holding newspapers. We thought you might want company, Sarah said, hugging me tight. Actually, I smiled. You're right on time. Marco, want to show everyone your science project? The one about actions and reactions? As Marco excitedly set up his experiment on the kitchen table, my phone rang. It was Tom from the hospital board. Edith, the vote was unanimous. We'd like you to head the new Patient Advocacy Foundation. I caught Grace's eye. She smiled and nodded encouragingly. I accept, I said firmly. On one condition, Grace joins as our patient liaison. Of course, Tom replied. We couldn't think of anyone better. As I ended the call, Aubrey arrived with Trisha. More friends followed, filling my kitchen with warmth and chatter. This had become our morning ritual since the truth came out. this gathering of people who'd chosen to stand with us. Mom, can I show them the letter I wrote? Marco asked. If you want to, honey. He pulled out a slightly crumpled paper from his backpack. Dear Dad. He read clearly. I'm sad about what you did, but Mom says it's okay to be sad and angry at the same time. I'm glad Mom taught me that actions have consequences, like in my science experiments. Love, Marco. The room fell silent. Grace wiped her eyes. That's beautiful, buddy, Griffin said softly. Did he write back? Sarah asked. I shook my head. But that's okay. Marco's words stand on their own. Like Mom's speech at the party. Marco added proudly. Remember when everyone clapped? We remember, Trisha smiled. The video went viral in our family group chat. My phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Randolph's sentencing was scheduled for next week, but somehow that didn't seem important anymore. Hey, Marco, Aubrey called out. Ready to show us that experiment? As Marco demonstrated how actions create reactions using marbles and dominoes, I looked around my kitchen. Grace was sharing her muffins, Sarah was helping Marco set up his demonstration, and Griffin was already planning the next family game night. You know what this reminds me of? Trisha said quietly beside me. That volcano at the party. How something explosive can clear the way for something new to grow. The doorbell rang again. This time it was a delivery. Official documents from my lawyer. The settlement was final, the foundation paperwork approved, and the truth permanently on record. Mom, watch this part. Marco called out excitedly as his marble demonstration reached its climax. The final marble hit its target, setting off a chain reaction that knocked over all the dominoes in a perfect sequence. See? He explained to his captive audience. Every action has a reaction, and sometimes the reaction is bigger than you expect. I couldn't have said it better myself. Looking at these people, my chosen family, gathered in my kitchen, I realized that Randolph's betrayal had created something unexpected, a stronger version of ourselves, a tighter community, and a chance to help others find their voice. Who wants to help me set it up again? Marco asked. Every hand in the room went up, and that's when I knew, really knew, that we'd won something far more valuable than revenge. We'd won our truth, our dignity, and a future built on honesty rather than lies. Ready? Marco called out, holding the first marble. Ready, we all responded. As the marbles began their journey again, I watched my son's face light up with joy and understanding. Sometimes the best endings aren't about what you lose, but what you find along the way. And we had found everything that mattered.